And praise the Lord. Here we are, Thanksgiving time. Seems like the kids just went back to school. Christmas will be here soon. Next thing you know, we'll be celebrating the 4th of July, right? It seems to just go faster and faster each and every year. I was thinking about it this time of year especially. I love it. It's getting cold out, so you can get the fires going. We had chili the other night. Oh, I love chili. And there's just something about Thanksgiving in particular. It's got a warm spot in my heart. I don't know if I've told you much about my childhood, but I'll simply put it this way. It wasn't always the best. And there were times in my childhood where I kept thinking, oh, Lord, what are you doing to me? Please get me out of this situation. But at Thanksgiving, it was different. Thanksgiving, it was nice. Everything was right with the world for but 2 days. It would start on Wednesday for me. I'd go off to school, and then I got to go to Grandma and Grandpa's house. Oh, that was nice. There wasn't fighting there. It wasn't a stressful situation. We had a warm meal. I got to take a hot bath, and then I got to watch war movies with Grandpa. And don't tell Grandma that, because she thought we were watching nice stuff. We were watching war movies. It was just spectacular. In the morning, I'd get up, and my grandfather and I, we would stuff the bird, and we'd season it, we'd get it all set, and then the honored tradition that all Americans know so well, we watched football. Those were the good days of my childhood. What are your holiday traditions? Let's hear a few. Shout them out.
We have a family of 30 from all over the country.
Family of 30, that is a lot. What else?
Well, we have married kids who have to share with the in-laws. So every other year we have what we call our adult Christmas, just because it's just as adults. So we just have more of a laid-back Thanksgiving, but we really enjoy the one where everybody's together.
Sharing is caring, they tell me. What else? Who goes around the table and they all say what they're thankful for? Yeah, that's a good one. Mashed potatoes, stuffing, turkey. For me, I say Thanksgiving and I smile. But there is a reality with this, and I didn't hear anybody shout it out. When Thanksgiving comes, so does one other thing. Relatives. They can be stressful. You know where Jesus said, where 2 or more are gathered, what is the saying?
There I am.
And sometimes we mistake that to saying there's fights. 2 or more gathered, Jesus is there, but there is that reality, 2 or more gathered. It's stressful at times. In our family, as much as we loved each other, there was stress. When you get family members together, sometimes fights can start. Sometimes there's that one dramatic uncle. Everybody's got that one person in the family, and drama follows them no matter where they're going. Other times, you just don't see eye to eye. Now, I can tell you this. My family growing up were Lutherans. So you can guess what Lutherans do when they get stressed. We're Baptists, of course, we pray. Lutherans drink. So, that was their go-to. Holidays really can be stressful. I want to point out a reality to you. Just because you love Jesus and your hope is in the Lord doesn't mean you're going to be stress-free. There are going to be times of stress. You can think about how sad it can be when family members can't make it because of traveling or because of being deceased. And that is a hard thing for a lot of people. Then there's the stress of staying organized. You have to have the meal ready, you have to have everybody happy, make sure that there's plenty of supplies in the house, and the next thing you know, it feels like you're running a hotel instead of inviting friends and family over for a good, easy meal. There's nothing easy about the holidays. I'm wondering if you have experienced this, because I have, that at times I feel like I should be just saying thanks to God and being happy, yet there's something pulling me down. Stress of the world, too busy at work, kids running around. And at times there's this misconception that everything should be perfect because we're Christian. But here's the reality. There are stories within our scriptures where these people have all the faith in the world, yet they're going through depression. They're sad and they're stressed out. I want to talk about Elijah today. It's in 1 Kings chapter 19. Because I think what we see here not only is an example to us as to what we can go to, but also an example of how we get out of depression. Does anybody in here ever get depressed? Yeah. I think we all go through that. That's actually one of the keys here. You're not alone. Never are you alone. Let me read the scripture. It says, now Ahab told Jezebel everything Elijah had done and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. So this is referring to a few months ago, we talked about this. Elijah goes out and he's going to confront all the prophets of Baal, and he says, well, let's have a campfire. You go first, and you talk to your gods. He's making fun of them because they're not real. He says, if your gods are real, they'll set fire here automatically. Go ahead, you pray, you do whatever you want. And as you recall, they tried and it didn't work. And he starts taunting them. Well, maybe you need to speak up, yell a little bit. Maybe your gods are asleep or on vacation. Go ahead, keep going. And it doesn't work. And he says, okay, now it's Yahweh's turn. Now it's my God's turn. And matter of fact, before we get this fire going, why don't you pour a bunch of water over it? Do you remember the story? And isn't it wonderful? What does the Lord do? He consumes water, rocks, everything, just like that. It's proof. Our God is real. And as a result, Elijah put all the fake prophets to death. Now Jezebel is out to get him. So Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah to say, may the gods, notice the lowercase g up here. Whenever it's a lowercase g, it's not talking about our God. It's talking about fake gods. May the gods deal with me, be it ever so severely, if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life like one of theirs, meaning I'm going to kill you. She's flat out threatening him. Now, I don't know about you. If somebody were threatening my life, that might put me in a little funk. I might be a little sad, a little depressed, maybe scared. I think it's very appropriate that in verse 3, Elijah says he's afraid and he ran for his life. When he came to Beersheba in Judah, he left his servant there. Now here's the first problem. He's going to go through a time of depression, and we can see why, but his first big mistake is he's now isolating himself. If you're stressed, depressed, upset, one of the worst things we can do is isolate ourselves. Once you start to do that, the brain does a wonderful job of convincing you all sorts of things that aren't real. God has created us to be in relationships with one another. It's a beautiful thing that when we gather here, we can hear what everybody's going through in life. We can pray with one another. I hope when we're done here, when we're having cookies and coffee, you talk to one another. We're meant to be in relationship, and poor Elijah has severed that. He's run away, he's hiding, and now he's alone. And while he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness, it says. So not only has he isolated himself from people, he's going to one of the most depressing places possible. Now I know that some of us enjoy the wilderness. I like walking out in the trees, and Tyler was telling me he was out walking at Seven Hills the other day. It's just a beautiful time. The problem is, we need to understand what the Bible means by wilderness. When you take this translation from Hebrew, you put it in English, we see wilderness. You tell me, in the Middle East, how many forests are there?
Not many.
Not many at all. So what do they mean by wilderness? What do they have an abundance of where things don't grow and often die?
Desert.
Sand.
It's in the desert. So he is off by himself in the desert where I'm telling you the most things that he is finding is sand and heat. In other words, he's making it worse upon himself, isn't he? I think we do this, don't we? We get into our funks of depression or sadness, and instead of going and hanging out at a coffee shop or spending time with people, we isolate ourselves, we go hide in our dark bedrooms, and we just start focusing on negative things. And it never gets better from there. It gets a little worse here for Elijah. He came to a broom bush, And I had to look that one up. It's not a huge bush. It's big enough that he can crawl under it, but if you think about the end of a broom, it's kind of prickly and not a whole lot of fun. Well, this bush kind of looks like that. It says that he sat under it and he prayed that he might die. Maybe a little dramatic, but oh Lord, just kill me off. I don't even want to be here anymore. I've had enough, Lord, he said. Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors. And then he laid down under the bush and he fell asleep. Can we all agree it's pretty sad right now for him? He's in a place of depression. He's isolated himself. He's gone out into the desert. He's doing everything wrong. And now he's to that place of just kill me off, Lord. Now, I hate to say that, but we've all been there. There are times where depression hits us, and sadly the holidays really can be one of those times. My encouragement to you is this. Don't follow our Bible hero here. Do not do what he has done. But if you do find yourself depressed, if you find that the whole world is falling in on you and you don't know what to do, there is one truth I hope you hold on to. God is going to be with you. You knew I was going to say that, didn't you? God is going to be with you no matter what. Even when we put ourselves in these situations, God is there. Look at the beautiful truth here. It says, all at once, an angel touched him and said, get up and eat. He looked around, and there by his head was some bread baked over hot coals and a jar of water. He ate and drank, and they laid down again. So right here, one, we see God is awesome. He is providing just the basic needs right then and there. Gave him food and water in the middle of the desert. This is a miraculous God that is providing. But it also shows us, what do we do when we are depressed and sad? It's really simple. Are you sleeping enough? And are you taking care of your body? Are you getting food? I will warn you right now, if I'm super grumpy, just tell me, Devin, go eat a snack. You're being grumpy. And typically that's what's wrong. I don't know if that's true with you, but it's a very simple thing. Get some rest and eat. Now, Les, are you telling bad things about me back there?
No, I just had an idea.
No. This is a real simple thing that we can do, but I wonder how often do we forget it? Especially the holidays, and you're rushing around to get everything done. Before you know it, you haven't eaten, you haven't taken a break, you're getting up early to make sure everything's organized, and it's that simple. Stop. Take care of yourself. We had a wonderful guest speaker during the Moms Tribe. Now, mind you, I'm not a mom. I wasn't here as a participant. I was in the back running the sound system. But this little boy we're praying for, Sam, his mother, Taylor, actually writes books and blogs and talks about depression. And she was sharing with us, when you're depressed, what's going on? And the biggest thing she kept saying over and over and over, Jill, what was it?
Sleep.
That easy. Sleep. And eat. She talked about sometimes all she wants to do is eat candy and junk, and she told us what she does is she gets a huge bowl of salad and just puts whatever dressing on it and eats that, and then slowly she gets back into a healthy style of eating. But it's all very simple. We try to come up with these big complex things, and the reality is, no, you just have to take care of yourself. And that's exactly what we see God doing here, helping Elijah take care of himself. The angel of the Lord did come back a second time and touched him and said, get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you. You know what? This life, this journey, it's going to be too much for you. You heard that saying, the Lord never gives you more than you can handle? Well, that's a lie. Flat out. He gives you too much so that you have to rely on Him. He's going to help you through everything. And that is the point. On our own, we are in big trouble. But with the Lord as our guide, as our Savior, as our shepherd, then, with God's strength, we can get through any journey. And so he got up, he ate, and he drank, and strengthened by this food that God provided, he traveled 40 days and 40 nights until he reached Horeb, the mountain of God. Then he went into the cave and slept the night away. 40 days and 40 nights. Have we heard that one before? Yeah. How many days did it rain on the flood? 40 days and 40 nights. How many days did Jesus go out into the wilderness, into the desert, and be tempted?
40 days, 40 nights.
That's right. How many years were the Israelites wandering in the desert?
40.
There's a significant thing here with the number 40. And I think it's to point out something to us. When we go to God and we're saying, oh, help us, help us, help us, which we should do, God's not obligated to answer us right there on the spot. He's God, not us. He gets to tell us how it's going to be, not the other way around. And I think this idea of 40 is really a time of test, a time of preparation. It's a time to get us into a place that when God answers, we're ready to hear it. If I just sit down in the pew and say, okay, God, here's my issue, now give me an answer, I think the answer is going to come back, you better stay in that pew for a while. You see, God is in the business of forming us into the people He wants us to be. I don't know if you know this. How many times does it take to create a good habit?
30 days.
21 to 30 days. You both got it about right. 21 to 30 times. So you tell your kids, now brush your teeth, and they do it 3 times in a row. And you got to keep hounding them for actually 3 weeks to make sure they keep brushing their teeth. When you want to do something good, if you want to go on one of those beginning of the year diets, you can't do it for a week because you're not going to succeed. You got to do it for 21 to 30 days before it's a good habit. Do you know how long it takes to form bad habits? 3 times. And it's a bad habit like that. I think God is preparing us. When we see these 40 days and 40 nights, I think God's saying, I don't want you to just pray this one time because you've got an issue. I think what God's doing is He's establishing a pattern. I want you to come to me every single day and share your life with me. And then, if you're like me, you expect God to do something big and spectacular. Here are the words that Elijah experienced. The word of the Lord came to him. What are you doing here, Elijah? Notice it's not a, let me correct you. It's not a slap in the face. It's just a simple, what are you doing here? And he replied, I have been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, torn down your altars, put your prophets to death with the sword. And I am the only one left. And now they're trying to kill me too. And that kind of goes to my sermon title. But God, I'm the only one left. Everything's going bad. And the Lord said, go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord. For the Lord is about to pass by. And a great and powerful wind tore the mountain apart and shattered rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. Sometimes we really look for that big, spectacular thing that God's going to do. He's going to shake our whole world and get us straight. And that's not how it works. After the wind, there was this earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake again. He's not going to knock us to the ground to get our attention. After the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. It's not going to be this big, flashy light show. No, it's the gentle whisper. After the fire came a gentle whisper. When Elijah heard it, he pulled his cloak over his face, and he went out, and he stood at the mouth of the cave. You see, this is how our God works. And I think you've all heard it. It's that little tiny whisper. And it's the one that you typically argue with the most. It's God saying, this is what I want for you. And you say, no, that can't be it. For Elijah, God was saying, I'm going to tell you what you need to do. You're in a funk right now. You're depressed. I'm with you. That's the first thing. And then he says, I want you to go back to where people are. Don't be isolated. And I'm going to give you a job to do. When we're so focused on what's not working right, what's going bad, that's all we can see. God is saying there is better things to do in this lifetime. There's better ways to looking at this. And it's not staying isolated, being fearful, focusing on all your problems. Matter of fact, Elijah goes on to say, okay, God, I'm going to go do what you tell me. And God points out, you're not alone in this. He says there are 7,000 people in Israel who have not bowed down to these fake gods who are still serving me. A lot of times when we get depressed, we think, oh, I'm the only one going through this. That's not the case. We're not in this alone. But we can look to the truths of Scripture to help us get through this and the beauty of what our God does. So this comes from Luke chapter 12, verse 22 through 34. And God is very clear here. Luke 12. 22. Helps when I read the little numbers the right way. Jesus said to his disciples, therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body, or what you will wear. Jesus is saying, don't stare at all those ads on the television that tell you you're only going to be happy if you buy this and eat that. He says, for your life is more than food, your body more than clothes. Consider the ravens. They don't sow or reap. These are nasty birds that just go around picking off food from the ground there. They don't have places to store it. They don't have barns, yet God feeds them. And how much more valuable are you than birds? Who of you by worrying can add a single hour to your life? Since you cannot do this very little thing, why do you worry about the rest? Consider how the wildflowers grow. They do not labor or spin, yet I tell you, not even Solomon in all of his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, how much more will he clothe you? Oh, you of little faith, do not set your hearts on what you will eat or drink. Do not worry about it. For the pagan world runs after all such things, and your Father knows that you need them. So seek his kingdom, and then all these other things will be given to you. I love Paul's advice in Romans. He says, neither life nor death, no angels nor demons, nothing can separate you from the love of God. We read through these scriptures and we know, yes, stress will come, but the answer is God is going to help us through it every single step of the way. That is the truth I hope we can hold on to no matter what we are going through in life. And when in doubt, I want to point out to you, there's a recipe in here of how to get out of self-doubt, how to get out of depression and start looking to the ways that God would have us live. It's Philippians chapter 4, verses 4 through 9. Paul is writing to this church in Philippi, and he says this to them. If someone... Nope, that's chapter 3. Man, I am having problems finding these little numbers today. Rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. Now, when you're sad or depressed, that's hard to talk about. How do we rejoice? Typically, that's a positive thing. But I'm going to put it in this translation. Focus on God. It's real easy to focus on the negative. When you're doing that, you're going to go into this negative spiral. But instead, let's focus on God. He says, let your gentleness be evident to all. How are we supposed to show people what our gentleness is like? A very simple thing. You have to be around people. Don't be isolated. Go out to where they are. He says, don't be anxious about anything. In other words, don't keep focusing on the problem. Let's focus on the good. This is what I love about Thanksgiving. Isn't this that one time a year where it's a reminder to us, hey, there is good in your life. Let's focus on that. And that's exactly what Paul is telling these people. Don't be anxious about anything, but let's focus on the good. He says, in every situation, by prayer and petition, so in other words, give it to God, with thanksgiving, present your requests to him. Count your blessings. That's it, the simple advice here. Count your blessings. Verse 7, I'm going to skip for a second. Because this is the promise that comes about when we're doing this. Verse 8 is, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, anything that's praiseworthy, think about those things. That is what we're supposed to do. And then lastly, he says this, watch what I'm doing. So in other words, who are the godly people in your life that we can watch and imitate and see how do they deal with these stresses? And if we're going to follow this recipe, then verse 7 is what happens here. It's the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your heart and your minds in Christ Jesus. What do you think? We're talking about recipes on Thursday. How is that for a recipe to get you through Thursday? Our God is a good God. The question is, do we know that? Deep down, when things aren't working right, do we know that? I want to tell you a quick story here to close this all up. Because I think at times we hear that still small voice, just like Elijah on that mountain, and we very quickly dismiss it. And this story is about a man, I heard it a long time ago, who said, I want to listen to that small voice. Do you all know what I'm talking about? A little small voice that it's typically a thought you wouldn't normally think, and yet you know this has to be God. I'm not talking about the voice that says, yes, you can have one more piece of pie. I'm talking about the one that says, share, help somebody. Well, this small voice comes to this gentleman over and over and over again, and he says, that's it. I'm going to listen to the voice. I'm going to vow to listen to it no matter what today. And after work, he's starting to drive home, and he gets the voice going in his head. And the voice says, I want you to go to the grocery store. And his initial response was, no, I don't want to go to the grocery store. I just want to get home, and I want to spend time with my family and relax. But then he remembered, no, wait. I'm going to follow the small voice. And the voice says, go to the grocery store. So he says, fine. I can go pick up milk, eggs, bread, some of those essentials. I know we're running out. And so he goes in, he gets these items, puts them in the car, and he starts driving. As he's coming up to his turn, the small voice says, no, I want you to go straight. He says, I don't want to go straight. This is the quickest way home. I'm going to turn. And immediately he realizes, I'm arguing again. Okay, I'm going to go straight. He goes straight a few blocks, and he gets the idea, turn here. So he does. And then finally, the voice in his head says, I want you to stop the car. Now he's thinking, people are going to start staring. This isn't my block. I don't want somebody to come out and accuse me of anything. But the voice has told me to stop. So he does. And then the craziest of all thoughts, take those groceries up to that house. So he grabs the groceries. And as he's approaching the house, he hears a baby crying. He knows there's somebody in there. He's really reluctant, not wanting to do this, but he does it anyway. Knocks on the door. And here a mother comes, and she's obviously been crying. Her eyes are puffed up, tears are coming down. And he says, I don't know you, but I feel like God wanted me to give you these groceries. And she immediately starts crying, saying, I didn't even know how I was going to feed my baby tonight, let alone over the next couple of days. Now, the person that told me this story swears it happened to them. It had many years ago. And I've reflected on it several times. One, do we listen to the Lord when He calls us to do something? Are we going to be that blessing for somebody? But two, I was thinking about the mother. All she could do was put her hope and trust in the Lord. And God provided. I think that's where we can look to Elijah. And he's down on life. He doesn't know what to do, and yet God still provides for him. And we can look at all these Bible stories where God is interacting with us, and time again, the thing I see is God is going to provide. Now, we don't just sit there always and wait. There are times where He says, now, Elijah, get up. We're going to have you travel for 40 days. We do what we can, but the truth is, it's going to be God's strength that gets us through that. As we go into this holiday season, we're going to sit down and have a beautiful meal, I hope, and pray. You're going to be surrounded by friends and family. You're going to give thanks. Think about what God has done for you. Think about all the ways that He has interacted in your life, both helping you and having you be a help for somebody else. And I want you to hold on to this truth, hold on to this hope, that you can rely on God in every single situation, including surviving the holidays. He is a good God. He loves you. Let us give thanks and praise to Him this Thursday. Amen. Amen.